1-833-437-8465. 1-833-HF-STINK. Georgetown Sean coming up a little bit later. He's got a couple of cool stories. Hawaii is considering a bill that bans cigarette sales to anyone under 100.
What?
Yeah. And Conan O'Brien says a DNA test revealed that he's inbred.
Wow, like the royal family. Wow, he's in good company. Right.
Well, that's why the royal family's got to keep bringing in all these beautiful women that the boys marry. Because
I know.
I mean, the kid that Meryl, what's her Marco chick? What's her name?
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle. That guy. The one that she married, he's pretty decent.
Prince Harry.
Is that Harry?
Yeah.
But some of the older royals, they look like their eyes aren't put on right.
Prince Baldy. Prince eyes too much together.
They're just all a little too close together.
Meghan's getting hammered, eh? They say she's been a little bit of a bitch around that.
Really?
She's been demanding, bitchy, petty.
Do you think really you believe that?
Oh, I don't. It's just out there.
Yeah, does she have a tattoo on her stomach that says white bread too? Let's talk to this gentleman. Let's welcome to our program, Phil, an official welcome to our newest sponsor. Who's our newest sponsor, Phil?
Green Genie SEO.
Thank you, sir. Yes. And from that fine company, say hi to Tom Guster. Hello, Tommy.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Tom. Now, I apologize. There was a bit of a mix-up in terms of getting you in here. So for your next appearance, we got to have you come in and hang out with us and Stan and the whole group, okay?
Sure, I'd love to.
Where are we talking to you this morning? What part of the world do you live in?
I'm just east of you in Bowmanville, Ontario.
Bowmanville.
They have a zoo there, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they used to have a zoo. That's a bit of a topic, so...
Oh, is it?
Yeah, closed down.
Yeah, but Exotic Cat World is just up the road there on the 115, right?
Exotic Cat World
is that what it is?
Ontario, my hometown.
Oh, it's Orono. Okay. Yeah. Exotic Cat World, right. But there's also an old western town a guy made in his backyard, too. You know that one, too?
Good friend of mine. His name is Doc.
Doc? Does Doc still have that place open?
Doc Holiday. We're good friends. He comes around here once in a while. We do lunch, hang out.
It's his backyard, and he's turned into an old western town.
Old Doc.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, it's amazing what he's put into that place.
No, I know. You can see it from the 11535 there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, all of this by way of saying that SEO Genie, actually your website is SEO-Genie.com, is it not?
No, it's GreenGenieSEO.com.
Oh, my God.
You guys have been saying it for a week.
I have. The problem with me, though, Tom, is that literally Phil said it 30 seconds ago, and I already forgot of it. GreenGenieSEO.com.
You got it.
Now, there's no Western town there, my friend.
No Western town there.
Before we talk about your business, let's talk about the business. For a long time, prior to Facebook, ranking on Google seemed to be all anyone was talking about. And then it sort of seemed to me like it went away. But you're saying that it's still important for businesses how you show up in that real estate.
Oh, more important than ever now, simply because, if you think about it, the smartphone has changed everything. People grab a smartphone, they hit a little microphone on there, they speak into the microphone in Google in the search engine, and the search engine gives them an answer very quickly. So it's become even easier now to basically go into the Google database and solve problems and get questions answered.
So it's as important, and it's funny because I think a lot of us, when we first started talking about you guys, I remember thinking, Googling something on a computer, but you're right. Now it's just constantly on the phone, and I hit that Chrome button, and whatever comes up, whether you're looking for a restaurant or you're looking for a service, it's what leads on the Google page that you go for first.
Absolutely. Human nature being what it is, if you find a result that's at the top of that, you just assume that it's the most important one. So, and Google stats bear this out. If you look at what gets clicked on the most, the number one result gets clicked on 47%. The second result, it drops down sharply to 17%. So, and further down the page, by the time you get to the bottom, say the 10th result, because there's typically 10 results on a page, you're down to 1%.
And imagine those people who are on the next page.
Yeah, well, we have a little joke about that. You guys are a comedy show, so I thought I'd get a couple.
Yeah, we're basically, yeah. Go. Yes, please try and bring some humor to this.
Okay, so SEO being not that funny, we do have one good joke. The joke is, where's the best place to hide a dead body?
Where?
Well, it's on page 2 because no one will ever look there.
That's funny.
Right. We also have a little anecdotal story that's kind of funny. Now, I can't confirm the actual study that was done, but apparently a very large firm down in California did a study, and they went out and asked 1,000 people on the street what they thought SEO was. Guess what the most common answer was?
Don't know.
They thought it was some new sexually transmitted disease that we'd never heard of before.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's still, with SEO and search engines and Google being around this long, it's still very mysterious, and the reason is that Google really doesn't release to the public what the criteria for their ranking is in their algorithm. So it's a bit of a mystery, and there it is. Right?
So what's your best guess? Like what and when? How does Green Genie SEO work with the algorithm? Like what are the absolutes?
Well, the thing is, there are no absolutes. It's a good point that you made about absolutes. Really, this requires a bit of an explanation, so you're going to have to give me a minute here and bear with me. People will say, you have to really, be careful who you listen to in this world, because people will say, well, they'll say absolute things like, well, you need at least 2,000 words of content on your page. Well, you might if your competition has 2,000 words. If you're an emergency plumber and people spend typically all of 15 seconds on your site because they've got a water pipe burst in their house and they need an emergency plumber to come as fast as possible, they may spend all of 10 seconds on your site. They're not going to read 2,000 words of content. They want a phone number. So it's not absolute. It's more correlative. So depending on what your competition is doing is what you need to do to some degree. You certainly don't need 2,000 words of content on the main page of an emergency plumber's site. You get the idea there?
So what you're saying is, depending on the company that comes to greengenieseo.com, you design your campaign to help them be number one on Google, depending on what they do and what they offer. So in an emergency plumber, you would help them rank number one using a different methodology than, say, somebody that was doing maybe pet, babysitting or boarding, whatever.
Yeah, there are some things within the methodology that are hard and fast things from a standpoint of techniques. So there's certain things that we just basically do as a course of action, and that's primarily because Google has analyzed thousands is ridiculous, and billions of websites, and so there's a pattern that Google sees. And what we try to do is we try to speed up that process, where if you were to put up a website and, say, share it on social media and try to get people talking about you, what we do is we kind of try to speed up that process. So what we have to do has to look natural to Google because, of course, they've seen this process billions of times before, so we try to replicate that. Above and beyond that, we use very specific deep dive into each particular company, analyze all their top competition, and then we get some clues as to how to, compete with those competitors and get you higher up than them.
It's a world within a world, isn't it? It's like fascinating.
It's really incredible and kind of really boring all at the same time if you're in this world.
Much like our show. It's incredible and boring at the same time.
But it is another world, right? Yeah. I mean, you have some... It's funny enough, a guy that I know, he didn't know that I was going to be on your show, and he heard a mention, so he texts me. He says, hey, is that your company? I just saw them. I'm pretty sure that's your company name. I just heard him, and he's an ardent fan of you guys. Listens every day.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, what's that person's name? Let's give them a shout-out, as the kids like to say.
Oh, God, what is his name? Here I said he's my friend, and I forgot his name.
Yeah, well, I got your name wrong at the beginning of this interview, too. What's that, sir?
His name's Cody. He's a drummer in a band called Thrown to the Wolves.
All right. Yeah. Well, good for Cody.
Yeah.
They say drummers are the most intelligent members of bands.
I just recently heard that. I heard that on Google.
Yeah, you know who says that? Drummers say that.
Yeah.
The rest of the guys in the band aren't saying that. Tom Gustars here from greengenieseo.com. And if you were talking about making Google believe this is all happening organically, if a company came to you on a Tuesday, much like today, and they said, listen, Tom, we want to rank number one in Google, and here's our budget, can it happen in a week? Does it take longer? What's the timeline?
It takes quite a long time, and that's the downside. So here's the upside. I'm going to actually run through some numbers for you here, if that's okay.
Love numbers.
Because really, Google is mathematic, right? Actually, the term Google is a mathematic term. And their algorithm is basically mathematic. It goes and looks at a large database, basically a library, and it comes to conclusions about things depending on the search. So let me give you some numbers here for a typical campaign that might come across my desk. So if you were a web designer in a town of, say, 200,000 people, typically you would, see web design searched approximately 200 times a month. If you took the number one position for that, which may take 6 to 12 months, seems like an awful long time, seems like a lot of money to invest. But on the back end, what happens is when you hit that number one position, you'll get searched approximately 47%, so about half the time. People will click on your website approximately 100 times because we started with 200 searches a month. So you get clicked 100 times a month. And even if you won what I call the Google lottery, so you're in the top of the page, people click on, the first 3 or 4 results, and you win the Google lottery and they choose 1 out of 4, that'd be 25%, or let's be conservative and say 20%, you would probably get 20 new clients a month. And if your average web design was $1,500, that would translate into $30,000 a month. Now, I use this example because it's a real-life example that I did for a web designer. And he said, when I came to him, he was ranking on page 2 for the major terms in his city. And he said, can you change that? And I said, certainly. And we did. And he says that his traffic is literally 7 times now what it is. He's ranking number 1 for his major term in his city. And he's basically turning away customers. So that's how powerful it is on the back end. Now, you've used the term a piece of digital real estate. Well, it is actually a web address when you look at your website. And the ranking in Google is literally like a piece of real estate in a web address.
Okay.
So when people come there consistently through that search every month, now that the campaign is over, you've paid your 8, 9, 10, 12 months, and the campaign is over, you're still sitting in that position. It sticks for a very long period of time, depending on who decides to come up behind you and compete with you.
So that's an interesting way to, because if somebody calls you today and say, hey, I heard you with Howard and Fred, we'd like to employ you, and you give them this information, then even after they've stopped paying you for a time after, there will be a sort of a trail of high ranking on Google until somebody else, employs Green Genie SEO to take it over.
Yeah, it's kind of like a law of nature. The things that take a long time to do tend to stick a long time. And if you spend, 10 years becoming proficient in an instrument, that doesn't go away overnight. And by the same token, a ranking doesn't go away overnight. And many of them stick. I mean, I did this web designer's campaign, and I finished it a year ago, and he's still number 1. He's still collecting. And if you were to ask him, he'll tell you that, not to brag about myself, but just about search engine optimization itself, he will tell you that it was the best decision he ever made.
Right now, if you Google Humble and Fred, we are the number 1 ranking for Humble and Fred.
You are, because that is your name. So based on the way Google works, Google is just a gigantic database, basically a library. And the search engine, let me give you an example of how a search engine works. Okay, you have a computer, you look up your website, you're looking at your website. On a PC, you could do a Control F search. And if you do a Control F search and then you type in that box, it'll search on the page for words. And, of course, it's going to find Humble and Fred right there, smack right in your site title. Now, your site title, when you look at a series of search results in Google, there's 3 things you see. You see the blue lettering at the top, and then you see green, and then you see a small gray description underneath. So the top is actually what your site title is. If I look at your site title right now, your site title is Humble and Fred Radio Podcast. Funny daily podcast from Toronto's favorite radio duo. So naturally, Humble and Fred being the first thing in that, Google's going to do the same thing. Its bot that comes through and looks and scrapes through the database is going to see Humble and Fred right there in your site title, a very important part of a description of your website, and naturally they're going to pull you right to the top.
Okay. So the key for us would be, with optimization, would be somebody to search Funny Daily Podcast and Humble and Fred come up.
Well, as a matter of fact, I was listening to you guys earlier, and you posed the question. I thought, that's a good question. I haven't looked up. Yeah. You said, where does Humble and Fred rank? So I did a little research. Are you ready to hear it?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we?
Because your site title is a really important factor. Of all, when you do that Command F search that I just spoke about.
Yeah, on a Mac, it's basically, it's not Control, it's Command F.
Yeah, Command F. On a PC, it's Control F.
Okay,
so
I just did that.
One. If you do that search, I mean, obviously, that's going to be a really important factor on your website. All the words that it finds there, that the Command F search finds, are not weighted equally. The title is actually weighted way stronger. And in fact, the domain name, which is Humble and Fred,
right,
is weighted even stronger. So Google also uses that weighting in its algorithm, and it's going to look at that and say, obviously, it's going to put you number one for Humble and Fred. But now also in your title, you have Funny Daily Podcast from Toronto's favorite radio duo. So here's what I did. I did Toronto Podcast, which is generally pretty general. You're not the only one out there. You come up number 58. Now, if we go a little bit more, drill down a little more, we go Toronto Funny Podcast, because you have funny and podcast in your title, and Toronto, you come up number 6 and number 7, 2 different pages. If I do Toronto Daily Podcast, which is also in there, you come up number 7 and 8. And if I do something really specific that's exactly matched in your title, Toronto's favorite radio duo, you come up number 1, number 2, and number 3.
For Toronto, wait a second. Whoa, Tom. Let's just soak that in. Let's just pause. You're saying for Toronto's what?
There it is.
Favorite radio duo.
Toronto's favorite radio duo. We're number 1.
We're number 1.
Number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Number 1, 2, and 3.
On your site.
Hey.
But even for Toronto podcasts, that's not bad, because all the radio stations, right?
Yes.
Have podcasts, and they get to promote them on a different level than we get to promote this. So that's not bad.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted to finish with.
And TV stations and the sports stations all have podcasts, which they are promoting all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Tom,
pretty intense.
And this is why we got to get you in here, because we have so many more questions. And I'm glad that so your advice to us would be what would we need to do to make to do better, I guess.
Better content.
Yeah, well, then we'd have to have better.
That would be
that's
well,
not gonna happen.
Content is important, but actually there's, people will talk, if you listen to guys talk about SEO, if you went to YouTube right now and listen to some so-called experts, they'll tell you there's 200 factors that Google uses and all these things, but that may be true, but really in our testing that we found that there's about 5 factors that make all the difference. And if you focus all your energy on those 5 factors, you get results. The main thing for you is to decide, well, what do you want to rank for? What's important to you? So that's the most important thing in business. This is in our discovery process. We basically start with the business person and say, what's important to you? What do you want to rank for? Then we try to correlate that with something on the web that people are actually looking for and come up with some sort of a campaign that's going to bring them the right clients and customers.
Well, I think the fact that we already rank number 1 for Toronto's favorite radio duo is enough. I mean, I think I'd like to rank number 1 for Toronto fart jokes. I mean, that might be fun. I don't know.
We're very rank.
We're listen, man, what an interesting... I knew this would be something of interest to people because it's fascinating. We use Google, and I don't know how old you are, Tom, but Fred and I are 125. Here's the thing.
I'm about half your age.
So here's the thing, though. Like, people just take for granted that we've all been Googling since the dawn of time. Google just became a verb in the last 15 years. But business people may not think that they have the budget or the ability, but GreenGenieSEO.com obviously has that. And this won't be the last time we get you on because it's fascinating stuff, Tom.
Yes, if you're a business person and you want to, one thing I do pride myself on, and I take the time to help business people really understand what it is you're dealing with, because nobody wants to give people money for something they don't understand. Mm-hmm. Right.
And maybe we can come pay you a visit and go see Old Town or whatever. What was that?
Sure. We'll go see Doc Holliday, or Steve, as I call him.
Over at what? Pioneer Town?
Yeah, Dockville Western Town.
That's what it's called. That's right. When you're driving up the 150, you can see it in his backyard.
Oh, that's fascinating, man.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, what a great conversation, and thanks for being part of the show. And we'll be obviously we'll be talking to you soon because we want to rank for something.
Yeah, sure. Maybe we'll make an experiment and try to rank you for something really obscure.
Right.
Well, our 30th anniversary is this year. Maybe we can help incorporate HF30 into our Google ranking.
There you go.
Listen, man, we'll talk soon, and thank you very much. And I just want to make sure that we get the name. It's GreenGenieSEO.com.
That's it.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Okay, see you, Tom. Okay, buddy.
That's Tom. He's got a good rap on him. Here's a little play for the cat while we just kind of transition. This is one of their songs from Decade called Dim the Lights. These guys should have played the Super Bowl, for God's sake. See Mike Levy and his without his shirt on, and his tattoos that all say basically Guelph proud or whatever, wherever he lives. Have you seen those? seen those billboards around the city that say Windsor proud? Have you seen that? They're promoting a school, a university in Windsor, I think. I just think that's funny. Windsor proud. When did that become a thing? Not even people who live there think that.
No, I that Windsor's fallen on hard times.
Oh, yeah.
The auto industry, and
Yeah.
you want a cheap house, like for people retiring, to buy down. That's the place to go.
If you want to get a hold of Play for the Cat, Sean, get ready. Big podcast extra appearance.